Okay, hey and welcome to example 12. In this tutorial we can take a look at how to emit from fast moving objects and a little bit of tips and tricks how to make that look smoother with less effort on the solver. So a very common issue is, for example, with a very fast moving object like a rocket or a pistol shot or like a bullet or something, is that emitting from it can be a really troublesome and heavy process because you want to have either it moving so fast that you can't even emit from it, or it's moving so fast that you have to use like 10 substeps, which is going to take a long time to emit from. I have a sphere here that it's animated. It's moving really fast upwards like this. Just over a couple of frames, it's moving really far for 10 frames. I'm creating the volume here. I'm doing the alt null, and we're gonna dive in and see what it looks like and what the issue here is. So if you just press play, it's gonna look like this, and that is not cool. This doesn't look like a fluid simulation. It doesn't look like anything. It just looks like suddenly spheres appear and they just emit smoke. That's it. So this is not cool. We want to do things in between these spheres that emits to, that kind of gives a trail to it. How do we do this? Well, we could crank up the substeps. So if you crank up to 5 and we simulate, we could get some, but it's still really hard. So we're gonna keep it at 1 substeps, and we're gonna do a little bit of trick, a little bit of a cheat here, which is really cool. So this sphere is moving here. It's moving from 0 to there and it disappears. What we want to do is we want to add some extra geometry in between these frames. And how we can do this is doing something that will look like this. Alright, so how do we do this? Well, first of all, we need a sphere. It's gonna be a polygon object. We're gonna create an ID attribute for each point. So from the point number, $PT, we're gonna use an attribute create. We're gonna type $PT in the value, and we're gonna name it ID, and we're gonna put it to an integer. So now each of these points on the sphere has an ID. And by this, we now want to do a trail. We want to trail 3 of them for each frame by using a trail sub, preserve to original, and trail length of 3. Alright. Then we want to do an add, to add lines in between each point of these spheres. And we want to add the lines based on, we go to polygons on add, by group, by attribute, and by the ID attribute that we created here. This means that now we will have lines in between each point that has the same attribute, same ID. These lines we then need to resample because they only have 3 points each. I'm gonna resample it with a resample, put it to length of 0.1. You now have multiple points here. We can use a carve to kind of shorten these down depending on how long we want our extra geometry to be. I'm gonna keep it at 1, and we now want to hook that up to the create volume, or the volume fluid source. And voila, we now have this instead of just this. It might look weird now, but it's actually gonna look fine when we do simulate this. We want to stamp points instead of point from geometry. We want to do out, and then in our dops we want to do as much as this. And this might look weird. We might want to do some things with a carve actually. So let's take a moment when it's like long, like this, and let's shrink it down like to about half of it, like that. And now let's dive into the dops again. Let's resimulate. And we can see that now we have a pretty smooth and pretty cool trail here that is emitting. And that's just one of the solutions to do how to get rid of this effect. Sorry, let's put it to, there we go. How to get rid of this effect with just spheres appearing. So instead we will have this, which looks way better. Just a little bit trick, nothing too crazy, but it's been very useful for me. Read through this if you're more interested, but yeah, that's how it works. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next example.